Welcome everybody, another beautiful session at the Transform Parenting Summit. I'm going to introduce you now to the lovely Marion Rose, who is also an aware parenting instructor. Lots of experience and lots of great thoughts about parenting. So welcome Marion, thank you for coming.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, great stuff. Now, aware parenting is a big theme in this year's summit. I've got some great people from that organisation talking about aware parenting, but I'd really love to hear it from you because you're one of the most experienced people that they have. Can you just give us a bit of an understanding about how aware parenting is a little bit different from other parenting paradigms?
Yeah, the main difference, I mean, there are a lot of similarities, which I won't go into, but the main difference is really understanding that all babies and children experience uncomfortable feelings from just even daily stresses that are normal and natural for all babies and children to bigger experiences, including trauma, but that might also include, experiences from birth, for example. But not only that actually they can heal from those experiences right from birth onwards, and that we come almost ready inbuilt to actually heal from stress and trauma right from infancy. And the other part of that is really to understand that most of the things that as parents we find challenging in a baby or child's behavior is usually caused by an accumulation of these unexpressed feelings. So when we have this understanding, it really changes almost everything about parenting, how we perceive a baby or child, and how we respond to them, and how we know how to help them actually return to their relaxed, calm, present self. So it's really I found it life-changing, obviously, and it's why I'm so passionate about it still 20 years on after 21 years on after first discovering it.
Yeah. I really I like your distinction there about the babies can heal along the way. One of the things that I do for my families is a form of therapy called rapid transformational therapy, which is about identifying struggles that people have and going back through time to find the root cause, the origins of those challenges in their own sort of being. And it always goes back to childhood, and it's always very interesting to see how the mind gets programmed over time. And of course strong feelings are what lodges in experiences that young children have and can have such a flow-on effect. So the idea of actually parenting in a way that can help children heal along the way, I imagine has huge flow-on effects in their later lives.
Yeah, and for me, I came from a background before, when I became a mum 20 years ago, I'd already had a long background in developmental psychology. So I was studying babies and children, and as a psychotherapist. So I already had come in with this background. But as a psychotherapist, I always thought, you need to kind of wait really until you're an adult, or, at least, mid to late teens before you can actually start the healing process. So to actually understand that healing happens, and actually that babies and children are constantly trying to heal from stress and trauma right from day dot. It's just that we don't understand that in what I call the disconnected domination culture. That's not an aware parenting term, that's from my own work. That we're actually constantly working against that natural healing process. When parents understand that, it can change everything. So what I love about it is, and not only, as you say, it has this long-term effect, which profoundly affects how children grow up, but also this day-to-day effect in terms of how babies and children feel in their bodies, how relaxed they feel. It's incredibly profound. I'm really grateful to Aletha Salter, who developed this work, and I think it's such a way shower in terms of really understanding babies and children on that really deep level.
Do you believe that it's true that babies and young children do have an innate healing mechanism that does help them to take their life experiences and return back to a level of acceptance and integration of those experiences and healing? Do you think that's an innate part of the human psyche?
Well, it's innate.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the core core principles of aware parenting that's innate in every human being, that we come into the world already able to heal from stress and trauma, and that babies and children, as I said, constantly trying to do that. And not only that it brings to them to a sense of integration, but actually it helps us feel calm and relaxed in our bodies. It helps us cooperate, it helps us sleep, because it's very hard to sleep if we've got a whole lot of accumulated feelings in our bodies. So again, so many of the things that parents find challenging related to sleep and cooperation and things like aggression, all of these things from an aware parenting perspective are simply caused by accumulated painful feelings that babies and children are actually trying to constantly express to us, but because we don't understand that, we're often working against it. So it's one of the core foundational pieces that, yeah, we absolutely all have that, and that it's never too late to start, because we're still always constantly trying to heal, as you know, whether we're an adult, whether we're 5, whether they're 6 months old, that innate knowing and wisdom is always there.
Yeah, I can see in my own parenting journey the growth, the inherent growth that's come, not just from getting older, but as a result of parenting 4 boys. There was an incredible process of recreating of my own sort of personal sense of well-being and comfort and acceptance. So yeah, I found parenting a very healing experience myself, and certainly my boys were very quick to show me what areas needed healing. So when it comes to holding feelings for young babies and children and helping them to manage those, it can be very triggering for parents, and it can be very difficult for parents. What sort of help would you, or what are the things that you would suggest to parents in order to be able to hold space for that?
Yeah, well, I would say, first of all, deep acceptance. Of course, it's really hard, and it helps us connect with all our own feelings, because we grew up in a culture where feelings are still demonized, where for the majority of us, we would never even once have been held as a baby when we had feelings to express, and just be held while we cried, where someone sat there holding us in their loving arms, feeling completely calm and relaxed, knowing that all our needs are met, and just being there saying, I'm right here with you, I'm listening. Probably none of us, or very few of us, would have been a toddler raging and having an adult who's just there saying, I'm here, I'm listening, I'm right here with you, really hear how frustrated you are. Or at any age, as a teenager. So because we need that as a young person to be able to internalize and being able to stay present in our bodies when we have feelings, it's a huge process to then re-internalize that, so that we actually can feel comfortable in our bodies with the whole full range of human feelings, which ranges from joy and wonder and delight and ecstasy and happiness, through to frustration and outrage and sadness and grief and loss, overwhelm and confusion. That if we have never had anyone be lovingly present with us while we felt those feelings, it's almost impossible to be able to do that for our baby or child. So one of the essential parts really is traveling with someone else, traveling with another adult who is able to be present with those feelings in their bodies, so that they start transmitting that body sense to us. So as parents, that if we feel frustrated, or we feel overwhelmed, or we feel sad, or we feel rage, having someone listen to us with absolute loving compassion, with full presence in their body, we start to feel that in our bodies. Okay, you mean actually. So it's not only that thinky cognitive level, that rather than judging feelings, that actually they're welcome, but actually that deep embodied sense of I'm safe whilst I feel my feelings. And actually, when I feel these feelings, they move through my body, and I come out the other side feeling relaxed and calm and present. So to me, we really require someone else, or other people, or a community of people, to listen lovingly to our feelings. What you're doing all the time with your work with parents, it's so essential for us to be able to increasingly just be lovingly present with our child whilst they feel frustrated, or whilst they feel grief, or whilst they feel outrage, so that they then feel that embodied sense of, oh my gosh, all my feelings are welcome. I'm safe here. Actually, there's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with my feelings. So that they can then also increasingly just be present with them in their bodies and move through them and know that they don't, or less and less need to repress them. I would say at this time, it's none of us is going to be able to listen to 100% of our baby or child's feelings, because going from where we've come from to be able to do all of that is impossible in one generation, I would say. But we're able to listen to more of their feelings. So they need to repress fewer of them. They can be more present. And we're imagining that with their children that will continue, so that more and more as human beings, we actually become more and more comfortable with the full range of our feelings, and that's a kind of evolutionary process.
Yeah. So you're suggesting having that support around you of people that you can be and release your own feelings, which I think is gold. Are there any practices or things like that that you would suggest parents do to also support their capacity to deal with their own feelings as well as that of their children?
Yeah, so I mean, in Aware Parenting, like if you have any of Aletha Salter's books, in the back of, for example, The Aware Baby, she has a section where you can reflect on your own childhood. In my own work, I have I'm an Aware Parenting instructor, but I also have my own work called the Marion method, and that's a lot about practices and processes. And one of those is connecting in with our inner loving mother who loves us unconditionally and can hear all our feelings. There are all different ways we can do that, from something I call the 2-column technique, which is literally having a journal, a piece of paper, and having a line in the middle and actually expressing our feelings in writing. I feel really frustrated. And then our inner loving mother saying, I really hear how frustrated you are, sweetheart. I'm right here and I'm listening. And so going through that process of gradually changing our inner dialogue. So for me, my MM work has been, for me, so foundational, because I've gone from having an inner dialogue that was full of self-judgment and guilt and shame to now having just deep inner unconditional love for my feelings and needs and so on. So like you said, I think parenting really invites us to go on that journey. So we're not only offering loving compassion to our child and their feelings, but we also get the opportunity to reparent and reculture ourselves, so that we increasingly experience that internally too. But it's a journey, it's not like something we go, oh, I'm just going to click my fingers and from today I'm going to feel comfortable with all my feelings, I'm going to be able to be lovingly present with everything I feel. It's a process.
I can relate to so much of becoming a parent, and growing through parenting requires us to let go of so many different parts of ourselves, and to even understand the different parts of ourselves. Your children are often going to trigger the parts that you keep hidden, the parts that we prefer not to be seen in public when they're having a meltdown in the middle of Woolworths or whatever, and we can feel very, deeply embarrassed about. So what you're talking about here, I think, is just so foundational to that growth as a parent, is to be accepting of all of those feelings that you have. And that description of, writing and journaling. I'm a great journaler. It's been my saving grace on many a day as I've scribbled on a piece of paper. But being able to release those feelings and then having a loving presence of yourself to support that is really good. Are there any other practices that you encourage parents to do in coming to terms with the different parts of themselves?
Again, so all these practices aren't aware parenting. So the aware parenting is really so much about how we are with our babies and children. That's all about listening to their feelings, about understanding that all babies have feelings to express through crying in loving arms, and all children need to rage and cry frequently in order to let those feelings out so they feel calm and relaxed. So, but it doesn't talk so much about practices we can do for our own reparenting. So me, that's why I developed the Marion method work for that own reparenting and what I call reculturing journey, because increasingly it became clear to me it isn't really about our families, it's about the culture that we've all been born into. So for example, another practice I do, you talk about embarrassment. So for me, shame and guilt are all particularly guilt, is completely created by what I call the disconnected domination culture. So I talk about these sticks, the emotional sticks that we pick up, the guilt sticks, the shame sticks. And we've all learned to do that in this culture. We don't inherently feel guilt as a baby. We don't feel guilt. Guilt is something we learn, we internalize it through shoulds and have tos. So that whole thing of, mother guilt is seen as something it's an innate thing. It's not an innate thing, it's cultural conditioning. So one of the practices I do is support people to increasingly see when they're shoulding themselves, either before they've done something or afterwards, and increasingly learn to be willing to put those shame sticks down, the guilt sticks down, so that they don't do that to themselves anymore. So that's another powerful practice. I also have something called the inner loving presence process, which is, it sounds similar to your work, which is going back to original experiences. So anytime we feel really big feelings with our child, I see it as our child is inviting us to go back to feelings in the past. So we're going back to a younger part of ourselves when we have that big feeling. So there's a whole process of really, it's like jumping in a time machine. We go back to those younger parts, often with our inner loving presences. So that might be our inner loving mother, inner loving father. And we actually experience the feelings that we felt then, this time with loving support. So we have loving listeners with us. So the feelings that never got to be heard get to be heard. And so we get to have a reparative experience as well. So we get to say all the things that we didn't get to say, and we get to hear all that we didn't get to hear. There's a whole process.
Sounds very similar.
In Joel and I were just saying, I'm sure you found that too, even just understanding, and I remember this was a huge thing for me, just understanding when I was having a really big reaction, really big feeling, it's 99% of the time is going to be actually from the past. Even that, just going, oh, this is a feeling from the past, that can be profoundly helpful, can't it? Rather than, my child is making me feel this, to, this experience is helping me reconnect to something that really needs to be lovingly heard. Again, we can drop those guilt sticks or shame sticks if we are feeling big feelings, or we're reacting in ways we don't want to see that this is part of how the psyche feels. We're always being invited to feel things that didn't get to be felt and heard the first time around.
This is a great conversation, Marion, around parenting that just isn't being had, is it? We're not looking at we think about it more as, how do we manage our child, train ourselves to train our child, but we're not really recognising that that inner work that children are inviting us to do, in fact, almost demanding us to do. And I always say this, they are your greatest teachers and greatest gifts, in terms of if you're open to the lessons and open to making the changes and allowing that healing to happen. It's amazing. I love talking on this level because I think it's so foundational. And then issues around sleep and issues around other things just take on a whole new texture, really, don't they? Can you tell us about let's look at feelings in terms of sleep, because given the sessions we run, the sleep ones are always the most popular. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, well, so, babies and children are innately designed to sleep when they're feeling. I talk about three things. So this is we're going back to aware parenting now, but it's a map that I've made from aware parenting. So the map of 3 is my own, but it's from Aletha's work, which is they need to feel tired, they need to feel connected, and they need to feel relaxed. So the tired thing is something that everyone takes into account, the yawning and all the signs. But from an aware parenting perspective, if a baby or child's crying, it doesn't mean that the tiredness is painful. What it means is that when we're tired, we're less able to repress feelings that are already there. That's part of our natural relaxation mechanism. So I'm going to go back to the map of 3 and say more about that. So the connected part, for a baby, they need to, this is an innate, it's an innate thing. If you think about ancestrally, when we lived in, I know the word isn't tribes anymore, but when we lived in communities and we'd be around the fire in the evening, if a baby was on their own, it would be extremely unsafe for them. You know, some kind of wild animal might come in the night. So inbuilt into us is this need to know that we're safe before we go to sleep. So the younger a baby or child is, the more they actually need the closeness whilst they're going to sleep. And what happens over time is they gradually internalize that sense of closeness. So if we support the natural development of that, they will increasingly feel that connection, even so they'll have internalized it, so that then they'll be able to actually go to sleep without having feelings to suppress. But the third thing is the thing that's most often seen differently in aware parenting, so that to feel tired, to feel connected, to feel relaxed. So often in our culture, we think we need to do things to babies or children to make them feel relaxed. So with babies, we might jiggle them or rock them and put them in a stroller or pushchair, or put them in the car, or just, you know, remove them. Or, you know, with a child, we might think we need to read them stories, or we need to sing to them. All of these things can be lovely, but number one, if a baby or child isn't relaxed, it shows that actually that isn't supporting them. And the whole thing about aware parenting is that, as we were talking about before, babies and children have an innate and inherent relaxation mechanism, which is the same one that they release stress through. They release their feelings, they express their feelings. So which is why before bed, or when it becomes to the evening time, babies and children, so babies will more start to cry, because crying in loving arms, so never left alone, is a way they release stress and trauma from their systems. They're constantly trying to heal from their birth experiences, their time in utero, that daily stresses that all babies experience, even if we just are the most attuned parent and we carry them everywhere and we do everything. It's normal and natural for all babies to feel painful feelings, whatever we, you know, however much we do. So the more if they start to cry in our loving arms and we start jiggling them or rocking them and trying to distract them, or we're actually working against that natural relaxation process. So parents will often say, my child fights sleep. And the way I see it is that we are actually fighting that natural process. So rather than, I'm actually going to share a bit more. So with children, that can also be crying. They'll often try and find pretext to have a cry when they're tired. And we might say, you know, why are you doing that? Or what often will happen with children is they'll start to get silly and goofy. They'll start to ramp up. And again, this is where in this culture, we work against that. We think we need to try and calm them down. We need to make them feel relaxed. But they have this innate capacity. They are doing what their system knows how to do, so they can feel relaxed. So through the main ways that we release stress and trauma, whatever age we are through crying and raging, through laughter, through play, through talking, through sweating, through shaking. So when a child is starting to be silly and goofy and start laughing and running around the house and playing games and asking you to do funny things, that's when parents will often go, no, we need to wind down now, we need to calm you down, we need to read a book, calm down. We're working against their natural system, their natural process, which is to release the feelings. So they're trying to release them. They're trying to release the fear through laughter. They're trying to play games like Paribus games, so they release the powerlessness they felt. They're trying to release those feelings from their bodies. Or they may then move into crying. They cry over a really small thing. We might be like, why are you doing that? Again, we can trust them. They know what to do. Or they might just want to play and play and play forever, even though they're tired. And that's when we can move in with what we call a loving limit in aware parenting. So we're saying no to the behavior and yes to the feelings underneath. So basically, if a baby or child is tired and we're with them, so they're tired and they're connected and they're not relaxed, it usually means they are trying to feel relaxed. They're trying to laugh and play or cry and rage, and we are usually doing whatever we can to stop that. Or they've already internalized from us stopping that. So they may be doing things like sucking their thumb or sucking a dummy or a pacifier, or wanting to read 10,000 books, all the ways that we learn to suppress our feelings. So that can make it really tricky, because the feelings are trying to come up, they're bubbling up, and we'll see them doing more and more and more of all these things that they've learned to suppress their feelings with. So they might just want, you know, more and more food or more chocolate, or you know, more milk or more books or more screens. These are all ways they're trying to suppress their feelings. So the more
And so our role in that situation
is to, well, do our own inner work, so we understand, oh, actually this is wonderful, gosh, they're jumping up and down, great, I'm going to join in. So we basically stop fighting against them and actually support that process. So if they're playing and being goofy, we get in and join in, and we do particular kinds of play, which, you know, we're parenting, we call attachment play, so, which maybe, you know, they are the more powerful one in power reversal games. So they chase us around the house and we pretend to fall over and we act all goofy and silly. Or so basically they're laughing and playing, they're releasing pent up feelings. And then if they suddenly start getting pinchy or bitey, we can offer a loving limit. So we can say, I'm not willing for you to hit your sister, sweetheart, and I'm right here and I'm listening. So that will then support the crying and the raging to come out. Mm-hmm. So we're working with those mechanisms, we're working with those, you know, processes, I prefer as a word. And if they're babies, we stop doing all the stuff that we do to distract them. We stop jiggling them, rocking them and putting them in the stroller and feeding them 10,000 times and singing and bouncing on the ball, and we just be lovingly present, hold them in our arms, look in their eyes and say, I'm right here with you, sweetheart, I'm listening. This supports them to let out all the feelings, and the more percentage of feelings they let out, the more they can fall asleep and stay asleep until they've had enough sleep. So I found over 20 years of my own aware parenting and 18 years and 17 years as an aware parenting instructor, it transforms sleep for parents. I know for me, just sleep was never an issue. It was just easy, because when children have expressed enough of their feelings, they can go to sleep when they're tired and they can stay asleep, and they don't wake up at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. They can sleep until 8, or so it just transforms parenting, because if we're not exhausted, we have so much more energy to listen to feelings and to be playful. So it becomes this whole beautiful cycle of everything becomes easier.
Gosh, I love that. So if you've got a parent who is going through a lot of struggle getting their young child or even baby to sleep,
yes,
and they've gotten into the habit of reading 10 stories and going back and forth to the kitchen, or how would you suggest they start to make changes to bring in a change in their connection and also being able to hold that space? What would you suggest to them?
Well, really, it so depends on each different family. And I think for every family, it's a different experiment to see what they want to do. But I would say in general is aiming to, well, number one is always ourselves. Like, do we have capacity to be playful and listen? Because if we don't, there's no point trying or pretending. So again, it comes back to what kind of support can we get, what kind of listening we can get, so that actually we have the capacity to do that. After that would be number two, would be to stop doing or to do less of, or to see if we're willing to do less of all the things that we do to stop the crying and the laughing and the raging. So just noticing all the ways we might distract, or we might go, oh, that's okay, we'll try and quiet them down, or we give them the 10th snack or whatever it is. So stopping all the, not all of them, seeing if we're willing to do less of the repressing and the distracting.
Yeah. And if they're not doing that, what are they doing?
Yeah, and then following their lead. So if they're being playful, join in. If they're already crying, listen. They will show us. If they get hitty and bitey, offer what I call a loving limit and listen to the feelings instead. If they're clearly tired and they've been playing and you're tired and they're still not feeling relaxed enough, it usually means that they do need to cry as well. So again, finding a loving limit, that might be, after I'm going to put the timer on for another 5 minutes of playing, and after that I'm not willing to play anymore, and they might have a big cry about that. So it's finding ways to support the feelings that are already there, that are keeping them awake, to come out. And the more those feelings get expressed, the more they're going to be able to sleep peacefully and soundly and without fidgeting, and just calmly, and wake up feeling rejuvenated and happy. And
if a parent's feeling triggered, Marion?
Well, if a parent's feeling big feelings themselves, which is so normal and natural, again, comes back to we need more support. It's so normal for our big feelings to come up. Most of us never got heard. So when we start listening to our baby's feelings, we've probably got thousands of hours of unexpressed tears in ourselves that are going to show up. We really need to be heard. You know, if our child's having a tantrum, we probably never got heard either. So the little 2-year-old in us is going, okay, but I want to let out all my rage and frustration and powerlessness. So again, either, you know, working with someone or having what I call an empathy buddy. So someone that you can on an ongoing basis be talking about all the feelings that show up for you, so they're less likely to come out in relation to your child. And if they do, we can always repair, we can always, you know, not pick up the guilt sticks and be compassionate with ourselves. It's so normal and natural for us to be hard because we're doing something completely different to what was done for us.
And if one of the parents who are listening to this and really appreciate the power of what we're talking about and want to do that, but the other parent is struggling with that idea or isn't recognizing the value of it, have you got any thoughts about how that might play out and how to deal with that?
Yeah, it's really common because again, and often, you know, if it's not going to generalize because you know, it's all kind of, you know, it's not always a male and a woman, a man and a woman couple, but in general, if it isn't a male and a female couple, often women, because of the way we've been conditioned, tend to be more open to, and more able to do these kinds of things. Often men in this era did get more conditioning around not crying and more shaming, and you know, it was so it's even more suppressed often. So often it can be harder for dads to actually be able to not only shift the conditioning, but also be able to listen to feelings themselves. So it's very, very common. So again, number one, lots of empathy because you're not alone. Again, getting other support from other places as well, because even if only one parent's listening, that makes a huge difference to a child. And babies, right from they're born, they're looking at the different people in their lives and they see the different responses, so they understand, you know, that, you know, mum likes this, dad doesn't, or if it's two mums or two dads, you know, they understand that and they learn that. So and again, just getting more support, being compassionate. I think in the parents I've worked with over the years, they often the other parent who's slower to this starts to see the difference. So for example, if you start listening to feelings, well, the proof is in the pudding. That's what I love about aware parenting. We start seeing a child or a baby feels calm in their bodies, they feel more relaxed, they're not clenching their fists, they're sleeping without wiggling around everywhere, they're making more eye contact, they're just happier. And children, you know, they're more willing to cooperate, they stop being aggressive, you know, they cuddle up, much more happy to be cuddly and close. So just all the things that we observe that just becomes clear through the evidence that then perhaps means that they're more willing to go, okay, well, maybe I'll start doing this crying thing or this playing thing, because it really does seem to work. So that's one way. It can be helpful.
What about meal times, challenges around food and meal times?
So again, it's a whole, you know, we could talk for 5 hours. Food is often becomes quite a thing because in our culture, we often didn't get to be, you know, to have food when we were hungry and get to be heard when we were upset. So most of us would have been fed when we were actually upset. So most of us cannot differentiate between the different sensations in our bodies. So that's number one. And so children often then acquire that from us. So often they won't know the difference in their bodies. Any kind of feelings will often come up around mealtime. So again, just loads and loads of compassion, lots of agency and autonomy for children around food. Lots of choice, no shaming, no judgment, and being playful. What I found in general is the more relaxed we are around food and the more we involve even very small children and supporting them as doing as much as they possibly can in making food and preparing food, the more likely they're going to be happy and willing to enjoy the whole process. And often there can be big feelings, so particularly around if it's an evening meal, again, as we were talking about before, by the time it's evening, children often have a lot of feelings accumulated, so that's often when the crying comes out. So again, I would say make it as easy as possible as you can for yourself. Like if you can like do a big batch of cooking on the weekend and freeze everything, or just like have simple things for a few years, just just have grated carrot, I don't know, whatever it is, but just make it as easy as possible for yourself, because the more you're spending a long time in the kitchen preparing everything, if your child's elsewhere, that's likely the time where they're going to start to be agitated and antsy and needing to cry and let it all out. So just, again, each family has their own way of working this out. It might be, if there are two parents, maybe one parent kind of listens to feelings or plays. But basically, the more we can involve a child in the whole food prep and food shopping and food choice, the more likely they're going to enjoy the whole process. But again, there's great attachment play games you can play with kids around food, and just make it fun, not in a way that's distracting them, but in a way that, again, helps any feelings bubble up, so they're actually able to eat and feel relaxed. It's really hard. I'm imagining everyone's experienced this. If we've got lots of feelings, it's really hard to want to eat. We don't feel hungry if we've got feelings churning away. So again, if children or babies have a lot of feelings, they don't really want to eat. They want to express the feelings first. So again, it's really important to listen and observe lovely babies and children. They're constantly telling us what they need.
I really agree with that. It's children are communicating all the time. Our job is to learn their language.
Exactly. And that's all it is, really. Learn the language and trust them. They know what they need. They know how to heal. They know how to sleep. They know how to learn. We've got so conditioned out of trusting that process.
Can you tell us some stories about the families you've worked with over the years that have had some really profound changes? I think storytelling is always a powerful way of learning.
Because it's just been, like, there are thousands, really. So
what are some of the biggest changes you've observed?
It's really hard to think of stories. I just think in general what I see so often, time after time, is parents just feeling joy, basically going often from like parenting is a struggle, or I'm kind of just not enjoying it, to actually returning the love to being a parent and actually enjoying being with their children, wanting to be with them as much as they can, because they, number one, they understand their child. I think that's what so often parents say, because of course some parents come to Aware Parenting right from day dot, but if they come a bit later, they might say, I just didn't understand what to do, and just actually understanding when your baby is doing this is what's going on for them, and knowing how to respond. And yes, many times you won't be able to respond in those ways because of our own feelings or our own unmet needs, but being able to actually, the fact that we know what's going on and we know what to do, to me, it's just, I've seen in so many families, just changes everything. Like, because they actually understand what their child is telling them. If their child is sucking the thumb all the time, yes, they might find it hard to support that thumb sucking into expression, so they're not needing to do that, but they understand. So yeah, for me, that would be the general thing in general. I mean, all the kinds of wonderful things like wonderful sleep and children stopping hitting, and children who've been just whining all the time, being happy, all the things that I've mentioned. Basically, I've seen everything shift and change. But in general, I would say it's the level of joy and love, and people saying, I love my child already, but the depth and profundity of the love I feel now, I actually listen to their deepest, most painful feelings. I'm there with them and I love them. It's like it deepens that to such a profound degree.
Yeah, which is what life invites us to do. Any type of relationship is really about pushing past our own resistance to love and to connection. And on the other side of that, when we do push against that resistance and start to open ourselves up, the levels of intimacy on the other side are profound. And that's, the joy, the feeling that you're not alone, the feeling of connection. It's what it's all about, both with children and everybody, really, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, that's our birthright. So to me, like, anything that we can do that can support that we feel, really deep sense of connection, intimacy with our baby, with our child, is one of the most profound gifts that we can have, isn't it?
Yeah. In running the workshops I've done over the years, and like you, I've been doing this for a long time, and I've certainly noticed a change in the pressures that parents are under now. used to run new parents groups 20 plus years ago, there were a lot of mothers, and I worked with mothers, it could be fathers as well, but mothers, mostly mothers, choosing to be at home with their children, and in the process of doing that, learn a lot more about their children. And over those years now, it's very rare I get mothers who even have that choice, let alone are able to make that choice to be at home with their children. And that seems to be the modern way. So there's a lot in the modern family, there's a lot of, from the moment they get up, getting them ready to go to childcare, getting out the door on time, finding things, packing lunches, to picking them up at the end of a long day. The parents worked, the child has been, at childcare and probably having a great day most of the day, but goodness knows what sort of tensions built up. Coming home, wanting to reconnect with their parents at a time when you're trying to bath and feed and get them ready for bed, and you're tired. And it was really evident in some of the workshops when we talked about this, just really openly, how hard it is, and parents were not enjoying their children. So in the context of this type of reality, and helping parents to, one, have the time, and two, to be able to connect in with themselves and to hold space for children who don't work on deadlines and time frames. They've got their own sense of time, or lack of it. I really feel for parents and those conditions in which they're parenting in. What would you say to them about that?
Yeah, again, that's why I keep going. To me, I just see everything at a cultural level nowadays. And I think the more we understand and take away all the judgment of ourselves and others, to see we are not designed to parent like this. It's going to be hard. And the less support we have, and the more, all of those timelines that we have, I can't think of the word, but the harder it's going to be. And to really understand that to me, that having that piece of understanding can help us be so much more compassionate with ourselves. I always think that's the first one. And the second one be to make whatever changes that you can make, even within what I call the DDC, the disconnected domination culture, that we do actually have more power than we think we have. So really seeing, okay, are there things that you actually really want to change and that you're willing to change, that will support you to actually enjoy your family life more? And often there aren't, but sometimes there are places where we actually could do things differently, when we actually see it's our conditioning that's keeping us doing stuff because we think we should or we have to. What do we really want in our heart of hearts? What do we really want for our family? And as I say, sometimes there isn't anything we can change, but sometimes there are things we can change. And then I think third again, as much empathy we can get. And what I love about nowadays is, in terms of empathy buddies, for example, like, I use Voxer with my mentees, that they can come in at any time, but you can do that with an empathy buddy. You can come in anytime you feel really pissed off as a parent, or overwhelmed, frustrated, and leave a 10-second or 30-second voice message in the midst of your feelings. And that's going to help. So again, there's some amazing technology also that can actually support us to actually let out these feelings and receive the empathy that we need within these systems that are not set up to support families in any way. They're actually set up to make family life really, really hard. And then fourth, again, actually using these practices like attachment play. Attachment play can really help with things like supporting children to be willing to put pajamas on, or put shoes on, or get in the car. And again, listening to feelings. The more feelings we do hear, the more our children feel calm and relaxed, and the easier all the things are. So, and then right back to the beginning of the circle again, to go, and it's not anybody's fault if they find this hard. This system is a really terrible system. It does not work. And the more we understand that actually we really need to change the system really quickly.
It is. And making different decisions where we can. One of the first things we do in the village is help parents to examine their family structures and the support that they have around them, and how to, it's a good sort of moment of reflection of, can we do this differently, and is there other ways we can support our family to thrive through these times, because they're so precious when they're from the very moments of baby lands. These are moments you'll never get back again.
And as you know, with mine, one adult, one heading that way, it's like it's so precious, something. And I know when you got a baby or a little child, it seems like it's going to be forever, but it isn't. And it can be the most wondrous time if we get the support, and if we, exactly as you say, we actually really do whatever we can to make changes to have a family life that we actually want.
Thank you. That's just brilliant. Marion, I've so appreciated listening to you talk, because I've known about you for a long time, and it's been lovely to connect and hear about your work. Could you just tell people who might be interested in following you up and exploring, particularly, I'd like you to talk a little bit about the Marion side of your work, not just aware parenting. Could you give them some understanding about how they could do that?
Yeah, well, so I have a website which is marionrose.net, and on there I have like really clearly differentiate. I've got all the aware parenting stuff, so you can look there, and I have courses and lots of free stuff as well. And then I have all the Marion method stuff, which is things. That's not the word either. Anyway, I have the Marion method offerings, which is based on, there's 3 different things. There's love, will, and conversations with life. So again, I have free intro that you can find out more, and free courses, and then longer term ones. And so with both of them, I have both of those 2. I have free things, I have paid courses, and then I have trainings in both. So you can dip your toe in and see if you like either of them.
Great. We'll put those in the notes to attach to this this talk. That's just wonderful. And you also do a podcast with Lael. Can you tell us the name of that?
Yes, and I think you've had Lael on already, haven't you? You've had quite a few instructors, haven't you? They say, so Lael and I have the Aware Parenting podcast, which you can find on all the usual podcast platforms. And that's really yummy. We've actually got our 100th episode that I'm recording with her today, so it seems perfect timing.
Oh, that's great. Oh, thank you so much. Very, very grateful for your time. And I know the people listening to this and being inspired by these shifts and changes that we can make in our parenting to really, really enjoy these precious times, and also recognizing that they're so foundational for our children. There's so much being built that is going to have a flow-on effect for the rest of their lives. So I'm very, very grateful to people like you and Lael and all the other wonderful people I've been interviewing. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and thank you for all that you've done over all these years and all that you continue to do. I so appreciate you.
Terrific. Thank you. Okay.